Hello, and good Vok, everyone. Let's just make sure that uh, you can hear me. Yeah, okay, say no. And I get the moya to everyone. We'll continue in the story of the master of prayer, Mitzvah Hashem. We will read the text and Be'ezrat Hashem talk about it in Mitzvah Hashem a little bit. Hold on. Okay. So, as we read before, the hero, one of the soldiers of the warrior, is telling the master of prayer, what's the story? He comes to meet the warrior, and he doesn't know who the warrior is. He already told the people of the land of the rich that, the deified money, that there was a king and a queen, and they had a daughter, and she got married to the warrior. They had a child, and the king also had, a wise man and very, very good friend, and person who advocated for everyone, and so forth. There were all the different men of the king, obviously enumerating 10 Sefirot, and there was a storm in the world. The storm mixed up the whole world. And as the result of the storm, people kept on looking for the tachlis, looking for the purpose of this world. So every sect chose a certain ideal which seemed to them to make sense that this is the purpose for which the world exists, for the world was created. The first one we visited was the people that considered the honor to be the prime directive of humanity. And we have read about, so with these people, they found themselves the demented gypsy to be their leader. The second is the people that said that murder is the purpose of everything, because everything, the ultimate purpose of everything is destruction and death. Therefore, a murderer, who kills and destroys people, and thus greatly bringing the world closer to its purpose. So they have actually found themselves a very angry person, very vengeful. They had a big scream, and that says, "Who is this screaming?" And I said, "This is screaming because someone had slaughtered Lo Aleinu, his father and mother." So they said, in great wonderment, is the more strong-hearted and angry murderer than this? I mean, this guy is a tougher dude than Al Capone. He murdered his own mother and father. This man must have attained the ultimate purpose. He pleased them. They accepted him as a king. Over them, they chose a land, engenders murder. People turn to in order to murder, and select for themselves a place, mountains and hills, probably in Sicily somewhere, I don't know, where murderers abide, and they all went there, and he became their king. We have touched the Indian about this Indian of COVID. Those people who decided that the COVID, that honor was the purpose for the world. The answer is that there is a grain of truth in that hashkafa, because the entire world and all the creations were created for the honor of Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's the reason for everything. Now, when people disconnect the honor from Kadosh Baruch Hu, they take Kadosh Baruch Hu out of the equation, then they started honoring all kinds of demented people. I mean, the way that the Olam deifies athletes, there's no athlete that gets that gets more money per fight than a heavyweight boxer. They're literally getting tens of millions of dollars per fight, per bout. And what's the tachlis of the entire fight? Is to give the other guy, to knock him out. And fighters die that way. And these are their heroes. And so forth and so on. These are the people they give honor to. Because inside that, there is a nekuda shel emes that the world was created for the honor of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The second one that says that the ikar is murder, lo aleinu. Obviously, there is an Indian, just one second. There is an Indian that is a mitzvah to punish somebody who is the form Mrs. Bezdin. It makes a great yichud. It creates an amazing yichud in all the upper elements when somebody, when Bezdin actually do the Daled Mrs. Bezdin, what they do is they formulate the four Mrs. Bezdin, they formulate the four letters of Shem Havaya Baruch Hu, the four letters of Aleph Dal Nun Yud, all the great yichudim, great tikkunim. But when that falls off, when that goes, Kadosh Baruch Hu is disconnected from them. The whole idea is Kadosh Baruch Hu is not there. Instead of serving Kadosh Baruch Hu, instead of putting together all the yichudim nifloim that happen from kanos to kedusha, it becomes murder. It becomes nuts. They start to believe that murder and war and whatever it is actually a mitzvah. That's a tachlis. We spoke about a little bit about the fact that, the Japanese actually made a whole art of killing. We spoke about it at great length. When the Ritzicha is not to bring the world to its tachlis, the tikkun, but because of jealousy, because of anger, all this comes from kas. and we said that within this union of Ritzicha is not just Chas v'Chalila killing somebody, but disputing someone. When people can get jealous of someone and they go after him, and if they don't have Yiras Shamayim, they can start up with him with awful inyanim until they Shem Yerachem, what happens to him. And included in that kind of misperception is when a person sees himself, as somebody who is weak, somebody who is not matzliach, and he decides that there's no more hope, and he falls into despair, and he's basically killing himself. Or it's chas v'chalila mamish, he's killing himself, or he's just killing himself in chlish sadas. He's like putting himself down. He's mavaza himself. He tells himself that he's worthless. He has no place in the world. And Likut Halachos explains in great deal about this Nekudas Emes and Melubish and the Svara. As I said, there's the Kedusha, the Kas has a great Nekuda of the Yehudim, but if people don't have the Kodesh Baruch Hu in their mind, the Shem Yerachem, they fall into Shem Yerachem, into Ritzicha, either murdering or shaming others, or killing and shaming themselves to the point that they can't serve Kodesh Baruch Hu. So we said that this murderer that killed his fathers and mother, and by the way, the Rosh said that it's forbidden to live in Ashkenaz because they're all Reitzchem there. So this is who they thought that as the Tachas were mentioned, this Indian, this tzaka, this scream that they heard. They did not say that Rotzeach screamed or that his father and mother screamed. They said they heard a scream because there is a person who killed his father and mother. Ruchnius, killing one's fathers and mothers, it alludes to the Chochmah and the Bina. The Chochmah is an Indian where, let's say that you hear a riddle. Somebody asks you a riddle, and you have no idea. I mean, like, man, you stumped me. I have absolutely no idea. Okay? But when you look into it, you don't see anything. It's like you're in the dark. I have no idea. So as you're thinking, suddenly there's like a spark, blink in the dark. Something, there's like a germination of something possible. That's Nekudas HaChochmah. The answer is already there, but you have no idea what it is. It's just a glimpse, just a spark. So then you have a koyach of introspection. You look into this nekuda, this little spark that you grab it, you start looking at it, and you're like mulling it in your mind, and you're thinking about it, and this and that. And suddenly it opens up, and you finally understand that's the answer. And you realize the whole thing, now you know the answer. That's the first spark is the Chokhmah, and that power of looking at it, the introspection, the reflection, that's the Koach of a Bina. Until you come to a conclusion, now you know what the answer is. Once you do that, that answer is called Das. Now you have Chokhmah, that's the spark. When you have the Bina, which is the power to take this little spark, which has everything in it, but you still don't know anything, and open it up, like unfolding, whatever it is, and suddenly you know the answer. That's the Chokhmah and the Bina. Now, obviously, one without the other, the Chokhmah without the Bina, just a spark, without the ability to unfold the wisdom within that little spark, it's useless. The Chokhmah is useless. And obviously, the Bina without the Chokhmah, just the ability to analyze and to this without that, the germ of truth of Chokhmah is also worthless. So the Chokhmah and the Bina, they always go together. You don't realize the Chokhmah without the Bina. And you don't understand the Chokhmah without the Bina. And there's nothing to understand with the Bina without the Chokhmah. So the Chokhmah and the Bina, they always go together. They're called the two fellows that never separate. The Zohar calls it Trein Rein, two friends, the Lo Mispashim, that never separate from one another. They're also called Abba and Ima. They're called the father and the mother. So Avrech is Bechokma, and the Bina is Im Labina Tikra. The Gemara says this. Zohar talks about it. If you call the Bina, it says if Im. It says don't enunciate it Im if you call the Bina, but Em Labina Tikra, a mother you should call to the Bina. The Bina is the mother, it is the womb that gives birth ultimately to the Das. The Das is the child. So you have the germ, which is the seed, that's the Chokhmah, that's the father. You have the Bina, which, makes it grow, that's the Bina, that's the mother. And the result is the Das. You remember, now you remember it. Next time somebody will ask you the same riddle, expecting you to be totally stumped. And lo and behold, you don't have to go through the entire process again. You just take it out of your mind, off your memory, and bam, you know the answer. People go like, wow, how did you do that? I mean, it's like, woo. The Indian is that that when a person is angry, when a person is filled with jealousy, when a person is filled with angst, he's filled with feeling of rejection, with feeling of being unappreciated, and feeling of being derided, doesn't matter by others or by himself. Usually a person who feels humiliated and derided and rejected by others he usually comes to the connection with others pre-prepared, to be rejected and to be humiliated and to be derided and to feeling unimportant and whatever. That causes the of kas, of anger, and retzicha, whether you kill others, you kill yourself, whatever. But the main point is that the only thing that can save a person, That when a person is angry like this, he loses the chokhmah and the bina. He's losing his mental faculties. He's all consumed. People are consumed with anger. We have all been there. When a person, gets angry or feels threatened or feels belittled, and whatever it is, he loses the Abba Ve'ima. He loses the Chokhmah and the Bina. He loses his as they call it, he loses it. Literally. He loses it. He loses, what do you mean he loses it? He loses the Chokhmah and the Bina. We don't realize that the only thing that was being lost at any time, at any place, that makes any difference, Chokhmah and Bina. We have plenty of bodies walking the earth. And, they have money and they have this or they don't have money, and they play sports or they don't play sports, and they invent things and they don't invent things. Whatever it is that they do, it doesn't matter. They live for the here and now as if there's no other reason in the world to live except for the here and now. What are they missing? They're only missing the Chokhmah and the Bina. They're only missing the Abba and Ima. They're missing the Chokhmah Amitis of the Kodesh Baruch Hu. They're disconnected Kodesh Baruch Hu, but they're consumed with anger. We're all consumed with whatever traumas we went through in our lives. Just the fact that you can say to someone, you went through a trauma. That's the reason why you're like that. Well, thank you very much. Guess what? That doesn't take away the trauma. That doesn't heal me. Just the fact that I know that I went through trauma, okay, like I feel it's a little, things a little bit clearer, but it doesn't take me away from my anger and from my angst and from my frustration. In fact, the only thing that takes a person out of that is a tza'aka, is a cry, is a scream to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rabbeinu says it in Torah Chaf Aleph, that it is a screaming that gives birth to the moichin from the Pchinas Ibur. It can still become a Pchinas Makif. You still don't know it, you still don't realize it. It's like it's a little remez, whatever it is. If you mekadesh yourself, Shivas Haneros, as we learned, B'ezrat Hashem, you bring it in, you figure it out. But to start having connection to Chokhmah and Bina, it needs a scream. We talk about that quite a few times. And that's the one thing that, that when a person is disconnected from Chokhmah and Bina is that they don't want to scream for that. It's not just a scream, of anger. When a person doesn't have what to say, when you have an argument with someone, as long as that person has what to answer, there's a good siman when the person ran out of reasonings to argue with you. One of them, he starts telling you what degrees he had. I'm a doctor, I'm a this and I'm a that. In other words, because of this, you should accept my opinion, which means he ran out of things to say. The second thing is he starts shouting and throwing epithets at you. That's another sign he ran out of things to say. He is disconnected from the Chokhmah and the Bina. It's only a cry that you cry to Hashem Yisbarach, that punctures, that breaks the water, as it were, and brings about the birth of the moichin, takes out the moichin from Ta'alumas, and from there, from then concealment. That is this inyan of anger. And so we will continue, and the next The next sect, also has an original idea. One sect that said that he ought to be a king. In other words, the one who ought to be a king is someone who has great bounty of food, but does not eat the food of common people. He only eats refined food, such as milk. And the reason for it is so that his mind doesn't become coarse. Such a man ought to be king. However, they did not immediately find such a person who doesn't eat the staple of common people. So what did they do? So temporarily they chose a wealthy person who has plenty of food. Also, his food was a bit finer until they would find such a man as they wanted, namely someone who did not eat the staples of common folks. In the meantime, they made that wealthy person king until they'll find such a person as they wished, at which time the wealthy person would give up the reign, and they would receive this man, in other words, that man who doesn't eat regular foods, as king. And they chose a land conducive to this, and they went and they settled there. This particular Nakuda is, somebody has a shefa mezoinus, bounty of food, and he only eats from food, and he doesn't eat food of other people. Just very, very refined food like milk, so that his mind wouldn't be consumed. Consult. The Kusa Halachas Ilchas Tefillah Halacha Dalet, he speaks that this is the sect of people who are looking for an Admor, a Rebbe, that he should lead them. But the problem is that they are searching for Mefursim Shel Sheker, somebody who is falsely famous. But what? That he will have a name of a big tzaddik in the world. And from the outside, he looks like an Oved Hashem. But at the time of Rabbeinu, those who consider tzaddikim as people who eat very little, just a little bit in order to keep the mind clear. The mind shouldn't coarsen. Mind shouldn't be, tzichisht and heavy from eating so much. And really, in truth, there are true tzaddikim that are really, really saintly, that totally broke Taivas Achilim. They broke it with them. And until they have actually gotten rid of Taivas Achilim so much that they have to force themselves to eat. They can only eat just a little by little just to keep themselves alive. And that little which they eat with tremendous kedusha. It's an awesome kedusha. And those people, they're eating, the food that they consume is mamash pchinas man. It says, that's in Tehillim, it says in Tehillim, Aniches, lechem abirim ochal ish. A bread of the mighty, amen 8, mighty abirim this is the malachim. A person that consumes the bread of angels, which is the man. This is an amazing. This is a mazon that Malacha Shoris are feeding from it. This is what the Gemara says in Yom. And Rabbeinu says also to Ramadalev that when a person makes a lot of his veidus, and he has a lot of kisufim, a lot of longing to Shemis Baruch, he's zoicha that all his food becomes lechem upon him, like in Beis Hamikdash. In Torah Tes also, Rabbeinu says that tzaddik is zoicha that all his foods, everything that he consumes, is just from the sparkling of the holy letters from which the food stuff is made of. So this tzaddik is zoicha. In fact, he doesn't eat and drink actual food and and beverage like other people. He's actually eating and drinking holy letters. Because that's the inside, that's the spiritual realm, the inside of the food. That's the living force of the food. No. Now we understand where that mistake of this particular sect comes from. The truth by them fell down until they choose liars and fakers that ape, the ape the tzaddikim. And they sort of like get themselves used to eating very little. But they do this because of godless, because of vanity, because gasas ruach. They do it in order to be considered important, to be considered tzaddikim. And that's why they're being received as a Rebbe and Manig. And the truth is that these Rebbes, as it were, they didn't even start to walk with Darkei Hashem. They didn't even touch the Kedusha. They didn't even start to break any taiva and midah. Even Tavis Achila they didn't start breaking yet. The only reason we're not eating luck is because they have a bigger taiva that covers up for that, which taiva is covered. For this, they're willing to suffer. Rabbeinu said in Sefer Amidas, a person thinks that he already left a certain taiva. It's just the matter is that it has another taiva who is much bigger that covers it up, like taiva is covered. But they couldn't, as we said they couldn't find immediately such a person. It doesn't feed himself from foodstuffs of other people, because you can't find a regular person that's not a tzaddik that agrees not to eat in order to build a das. Even though they know that that's the way it should be, but they don't do anything. So in the meantime, they took a wealthy person that has a lot of food, and he eats, very gourmet, kind of thing. So that the other usually doesn't eat, that will be the one. It's like the sect that shows himself a gypsy or a cruel murderer. They have absolutely no kesher to the kovod or the tikkun olam. They found themselves a wealthy man. This wealthy man doesn't have any intentions of eating delicately. Only what? He has so much food that he eats only things that, nightingale tongues, things that nobody in the world can afford. Oh, he is out of this world. And he's from them. He chooses whatever it is tasty from him. So temporarily they took a rich person and made him a melech. The fact that Dafka took the rich person, because that state of Ashirus, that sect of Ashirus, is really sprinkled in all the Kitos. Because Tavas Mammon is all over. It's mixed up in all the Kitos, because they all want money. And this is Terech of Gimel. All the Avodah Zaros in the world are stuffed into money, are inside money. This is how they took a person that in the meantime, he will be their leader. He will be their leaders. And you can see, that Rabbeinu spoke about the Rebbeim that were in his time, that, you're talking about the tzaddikim, the real tzaddikim. So he said, why do the tzaddikim in our days are mostly wealthy? His time, during the time of, of Amot of Chernobyl, the few other tzaddikim really behaved with great wealth. He said because they were really incarnations of tzaddikim from previous generation. There is in Pirkei Avos, it said anybody is mekayim the Torah from poverty, in the future will be mekayim the Torah from wealth. So Rabbeinu says these tzaddikim, the true tzaddikim, they're mekayim the Torah from wealth. There because they were tzaddikim that kept the Torah at great poverty from before. But in truth, the matter is, the tzaddikim that were truly wealthy had absolutely no hana from the wealth. They used the wealth only to come, as we learn in Torah 60, to come to Tvuna Satera La'onka. Moshe Rabbeinu became wealthy from the shards of the sapphire from which the luchos were made. As Kadosh Baruch Hu told him, Psalach luchos, when you'll be able to have luchos, Chazal say, Psoilis yeshulcha, in other words, the residue, the garbage, the chinks that fall off when you're sculpting the luchos will belong to you. So the tzaddikim say that when will Moshe Rabbeinu, because Baruch Hu gave him a remes of Moshe Rabbeinu, when the ashiras will serve you to receive the entire Torah, when the wealth and money will be considered by you as garbage, as psoilus. We know, from Yudah Anossi, the Rebbe, the prince, put together the Mishnayos. They said the two richest people in the world at that time was Rabbi Yehuda Anossi and Antoninus Caesar, that they were the wealthiest people. And before he passed away, Rabbi Yehuda Anossi lifted up his 10 fingers and he said, Ribono Shel Olam, you know that I have not enjoyed this world even as much as a little finger. The assurance of Rabbi Yehuda Anossi was only to Tvuna Satera L'Onko today, to understand the Torah at great depth. That's the only reason they use assurance. So instead, they take a Rebbe and they give him a lot of money, and a rich person would come, and if he gives a lot of money, he's sitting very close to the Rebbe. But in the first Meshachar, we don't have the ability to say who is the first Meshachar and who isn't. But the people that they just want a Rebbe, they will, and they took whoever it is just to have a Rebbe. It's a problem. The problem is that it comes to teach us we need a Rebbe. We must have a Rebbe. We cannot serve a Kadosh Baruch Hu without the tzaddik. We cannot. And we cannot take substitutes that have a lot of money, that have many chassidim. So in the meantime, he will be my Rebbe. Unless you actually feel that he is giving you toyelas and avodas Hashem. If not, it's just a waste of your time. And mistama, you're close to somebody who is erroneously famous. Could be a very nice man, could be, very sweet. But it's not gear. B'ezrat Hashem, we will stop here. And B'ezrat Hashem, next week we will continue with the story of the next sect. Who they were, what was their principle, what was the tachlis as far as they were concerned, and who they took as a king in order to reach their tachlis, what was the mistake, so in such a way that we can, B'ezrat Hashem, stay away from it. Now, if I recall, B'ezrat Hashem, just stay for a minute and just finish this shir.